as I told you, like, do not expect to like understand everything in one day. And these are some of the most difficult like concepts in JavaScript for a beginner. Concept like promise, a concept like async await, fetch, and things like that are very difficult. So do not treat this like lecture as a final blueprint for these things. Just, you know, this is a definition, an initial introduction to these concepts. Later, when we use it in React, you will get it more. Today, just, you know, mimic, read, like watch and mimic. Later you will do it by yourself. When we do it with React, you will get it even more. We start with rest and spread operators. They are very important for, you know, extracting variables from arrays and objects. Then destructuring, again, very, very important for React, for extracting variables from especially objects here. Promises, this is very important for APIs. Async await, the same. Fetch for calling APIs. Ternary operator for conditionals. This is a better way of writing conditionals sometimes, of course, not all the time, but we'll discuss these things today. Now let's talk about the concept of spread and operators. In ES6 or ECMAScript 6 modern JavaScript, they are like both expressed in 3 dots. So let's say we have an array of fruits, which is banana, apple, orange, mango. And what we used to do, if we wanted to, for example, access apple, we would do something like fruits in the position of 1. Of course, arrays, this is position 0, then 1, 2, 3. And we name this as, let's say, const apple. And then we could do a console.apple. Let's see if we have the console. Yeah. And if we can have this, if we refresh, yeah, we have apple. However, this is a bit, you know, too much repetition, too much work. So we have the idea of destructuring. Now we will talk about destructuring, spread and rest together because they are very much linked. So what we do instead, we will do something like this. Const, say, let's not do this. Let's A, B, C, D, for example, equals or assigns to fruits. Now let's see what we have. Console.log A, B, C, D. And if we go to our console, of course, I'll explain how this works. If it, we have banana, apple, orange, mango. How? Well, in arrays, we have positions. So this is position 0, this is position 1, this is 2, this is 3. Now, directly, when we destructure something, this becomes position 0. Like it becomes banana, however you name it. No matter if you name it AWA, banana, anything. This is becomes position 1, 2, 3 in fruits. And they all become constants by themselves. Like they all become either variables or a constant in themselves. So this is how we destructure. Like right now, instead of an array, we have 4 variables from the fruits. What if we want to skip one of them? How you skip? So we say const, for example, A. Now we want to skip B. We don't write anything. C and D. We do fruits or assign fruits. Now we have banana, we have orange, we have mango, but we don't have apple because the position 1 is empty. What if we want to take one value and put the rest into another array? Well, that's called rest operator. We do const a, then rest on roots. Now, if we do like console.log rest, then rest, let's see what we have. Hopefully it won't be horrible. It has already been declared. Now identifier. See, let's just remove it. Remove this. No. Yeah. The rest is apple, orange, mango. Apple, orange, mango. What rest does is, like, we've taken the position of a banana onto a variable on itself, then the rest of them into another array. That's the whole concept of like rest operator. We have taken the position 0 here into an independent variable, then the rest of them into another array. So how about if we make it all? Now, definitely doesn't matter. We just created another array, name it all, which is equal to apple, orange, and mango, like this. So this is rest operator on arrays. Now, how about thread operator? Well, let's say we have another array const like countries. We say Egypt, UK, Japan, India. Now, what we can do, we can create another array called all. We can spread everything from fruits, then spread everything from countries. Now, if we console.log all, let's say what we have. The Chrome console, do this. We have banana, apple, mango, India, Japan. So this is very good to, you know, mixing like arrays, combining arrays and stuff like that. This is called rest operator. It's the same concept as this called spread operator. It's the same concept as rest, but it's used different. How about on objects like destructuring and rest and spread? Well, with objects, let's say const book equal to name, author, year. I have no idea when it was written. Author. I have no idea who like wrote her. Was it J.K. Rowling? That might be easier. Okay. So how do we like make this independent variable? Well, same idea. However, this time not an array. We have an object and we have name and we say rest equal to book. Let's console.log name and console.log rest. Let's see what we have. Why is name is deprecated? Okay, let's go to our Chrome console, see if it's deprecated. We have Harry Potter in the name. Then we have another object, which is author and year. So this is quite simple. I hope you understand. And if we want to take all the values, what we do is we just write name, year, author, Now we have all the values like as independent variables. This is very important in React because more often than not, you have something like const from the database, which is an object name and year, let's say 2000, position, let's say manager. And when we want to put this in HTML, you can't put an object in HTML, so you destructure it. You say const like name, year, position from employee. Then you can use these values in your HTML. This is destructuring. Rest and spread. Rest and spread are the same thing but used in different ways. Rest tells you like give me all the values remaining in another array or object. Spread tells you like spread out all the values in this array and object into like a new array or a new object. So if you ever wanted to extract variables from an object or an array, what you do, if you have array, just a repetition, if you have array, you use like const or let, and the array here, like say books, something like this. And of course, in arrays, we have positions. So anything here is 0. That is the first, value of the array. Then 1, 2, and if you want to skip 3, then you do that, and 4. And if you want to give it the rest like this. For objects, since we have key value pairs, we can use the keys. So we say const, and of course, this is object from the book. Then you can use keys like author. Then we have this value as a value called author. We can use it for combining, as we've seen. We can use it for spreading. We can use it for extracting variables. Mostly when we use it with React, we use it for extracting variables from objects. This is all about destructuring arrays, objects, also rest and spread operator. Okay, now it's time to talk about one of the most difficult concepts in ES6, which is promises. Now, promises are used for asynchronous action, an action that could be, random blocking. So we make it as asynchronous. Now, when we deal with databases, you might understand these things better, but for now, just know that promises evaluates the condition and checks if it succeeds, checks for success, and checks for rejection. How we do this? Well, let's say we have let statue equals, and now how we use promise in JavaScript, we just take a blueprint from the original promise in JavaScript language, which like creating a new class, we say new promise. Now this new promise takes a callback function. This callback function has two arguments. First is resolve, second is reject. Now let's create the arrow function. Here we write the condition, or we write the statement, then check for success, then check for failure. Now the statement, let's say const answer equals 1 plus 4. This is a statement we make. We say answer is equal to the result of 1 plus 4. Now here, if answer equals to say 5, we say resolve. That means we have the success and success. However, else we say rejects, we say failure. Now this is the promise, but how do we check it? Well, we take the variable that has a promise and say then. Now then means success. If we have success, let's give it an argument. We say console.log message. I will explain this more in detail. For failure, we say catch, and again message console.log message. Okay, let's check just our Chrome console to see what it gives us. It gives us success. What if we make it like 6 or 8? Now failure, because I made it 8 without here I made it 8. It's failure. See, we just take the promise from JavaScript, create a new blueprint from this promise, which takes a callback function. This function has 2 arguments, one for resolve and one for reject. Then we have a statement. Let's say the statement says our answer is 1 plus 4, which is 5. We check for success. If answer equals to 8, we say resolve it as success. Else, reject it as failure. Now, in promises, we have .then and .catch. .then is for success, and it takes a callback function, which is a message. Since this is for success, it's for resolve, and the message or the argument represents this message. Catch for reject or failure, and the argument in callback function of catch represents this message. So when we deal with React, how do we use promises? Well, we use it for calling APIs. APIs can be asynchronous, or asynchronous, of course, call. Sometimes you call an API and it's not ready. You have to call it asynchronously. And if there is no result, sometimes you have to give a message of failure. So we call the API here. Say we say const API equals to true, that if the connection is true. Then we say if we have API, if it is true, then we do some operations here. Else, we reject it. We will talk about promises more, but it's better to practice it, to have an idea about it. Later when we do React, we will know more about it. Now, many programmers, like JavaScript programmers, prefer to use async await instead of promises. Async await is just a syntactic sugar for promises, but it's, more easily written. For example, if you have an API call, say we call an API, then we do it like this. Const function, let's say const call I think is reserved one. So let's do an arrow function. Say we have fetch. Fetch is part of the web browser API. So fetch some API, something like that. However, this function, which calls another API online, is synchronous. That means these things happen together. Whenever we call this function, everything is coming back to us without parsing the data, without anything else, and that's not the right way going about. What we do, we make this asynchronous. So this is step-by-step process. We tell it like that. And we do const response equals to await. Anything that needs waiting, we say await. We have this function which is asynchronous step by step, and we have to await this, this process. Then when we have this, we have another data which is await, for example, response.json. Now, you might not understand this, but what we have to know after we do React, we of course will deal with real APIs and explain this in more detail. But what you need to know about async await now is async creates step by step. When we say this function is async, that means step by step. Anything await is coming one after the other. So when we say await this, it means unless this is resolved, as in promises, this does not happen. Only when this is resolved, this step will happen. And this, of course, if we have something else, then we say, wait for this until that happens. Just think about it like that. Async, step by step, await, making the your argument, your steps like declared. If we like have something that doesn't need async await, then we just do it here because this doesn't need any kind of async await. But this, in order to have the result from the API, first we have to fetch it. So this is async await and we have to know the concept. I will explain this, of course, more when we do React. Now let's talk about fetch. Fetch is used for getting data from external data sources, whether it's a database, whether it's an external API, whether it's an object. We can use fetch, to get data from that. And we do have a fake data source called a JSON placeholder. We want to get data from. If we can actually check, let's go to the Chrome and here write JSON placeholder. Here we have many data sources which are open APIs. Let's say we want posts and we have this URL. Now let's get back to our VS Code and have this. This is our data source. This is, for example, our database URL. How do we use fetch? Well, fetch is very easy. Fetch, we just say, for example, this, and this gives us a result. Let's see the, let's keep it in a variable and see what we have. What happened? And let's see what we have. We have a promise. Now we have to make this promise fulfilled. How do we make this promise fulfilled? Whenever we have data from data sources, like this is part of APIs, we have to parse it, and we do parse it with JSON. Our request, HTTP request, when we make a request to an external data source, they are sending data for us, but it has to be understood in JSON. So how do we do that? Well, we have result, which is a promise. We do, for example, const data equals result.json. This JSON is part of JavaScript, which turns anything into JSON if possible. Now let's see what do we have. And if we go to our console, result.json is not a function. Okay. Now tell me why did we fail? Because this is a step-by-step process, because we don't know we have this, and this does not know like we have data from this. So we have to write it in a, like, in an asynchronous, for example, function, something like this. Now this is a normal arrow function with asynchronous. For example, const data equals to fetch this. However, this is asynchronous, so we make it asynchronous. Now we have step 1. In step 2, we say result equals to await data.json. Let's have the result now. Of course, we have to say data. We have to call it. Now we have the result. As you see, hundreds of, posts. But how? So I did this in order to tell you that sometimes operations are asynchronous and should be done step by step. In the first way, when we did fetch on its own, it didn't work because while it's written after that, while the result is written after this, for example, say this data equals fetch. The difference when this happens to this is almost negligible. So we don't have result from this yet, and this fails. You see, this task is dependent on the success of this task. So it's asynchronous. And when we have something asynchronous, whether we either do it with promises or we do it with async await. Async await is we simply create a function and put async first. This is an asynchronous, and then make it step by step with await. First step, const data. If this needs waiting, we say await. Then the result, we await this, then turn this into JSON. Then we have the result that we want. When we do APIs, we discuss this more, of course, but for now, have an idea that it's very, very important that we use either async await or promises with APIs, because calling APIs is an asynchronous action. Now let's talk about ternary operator. So how does ternary operator works? For example, we have const blue equals to true. This is a boolean. It says blue is true, but we have blue. Now for conditions, we say if blue, now this means this is true. We say console.log blue is true, else console.log blue is false. Let's see what we have. This is just normal conditions. We have some data from before. Now if we do in our console and blue is true, however, if blue is false, it says blue is false. Now this is all good, but we need a more concise way to tell JavaScript that we want this operation. How do we do this operation? Well, let's keep this for a reference, and we say blue. Now this question mark means if blue is true, then we say blue, else we say red. Let's just console.log the whole thing and see if we have an idea. Hopefully we will succeed. Red. Because, why red? Because blue is not true. If we make it true, I just made it true. When you see here, I just made it true. Now let's return to the console and see. We have blue. Now, why this is important? Well, because this is a much more concise way of writing like ternary or writing conditionals. See, we have one simple line and all this like boilerplate. We can do it just with this. We use this mostly for checking like dark and light themes. For example, we say we have a button and we say if this button is clicked, we say if button is clicked, then choose the dark class, else choose the light class. So we do this later. How? We just create a button. The value of the button will be false. We have the light, and light we, give the different colors to background and stuff like that. Then, but if it's clicked, then we activate dark class, dark, which gives us another color. It will be very interesting, I promise. For now, just understand this is the evaluated condition here. Like we have a value or a variable which has the value of true of. Now it could be something else. It could be like, manager. We say if blue equals to manager, then write blue. Else write red. Something like that. This is very, very important for React, and you will see it, but hopefully you will understand the idea.